The massive war room of the Galactic Council buzzed with excitement and cruel laughter. Hundreds of alien commanders from across the galaxy had gathered to witness what they believed would be the easiest victory in galactic history. On the giant, holographic display floating in the center of the room, Admiral Crox pointed at what looked like the most pathetic sight any of them had ever seen. 12 tiny human ships drifted in space near the Arcturus star system. Each vessel was so small, it looked like a child's toy compared to the massive alien warships surrounding the room. The ships were barely larger than the cargo containers that supplied their fleets, and they moved slowly through space, like they were lost and confused. Commander Thale burst into wheezing laughter, his 4 muscular arms shaking as he tried to catch his breath. His species, the Vrex, were known for their serious military discipline, but even he couldn't contain his amusement at the sight before them. "Are you telling me this is what humanity calls a war fleet?" he gasped between laughs. "I've seen mining operations in the Outer Rim with more impressive protection than this." The laughter spread throughout the chamber like wildfire. The crystalline beings from the Zephyr worlds chimed musical notes of mockery, while the reptilian Karathi hissed their version of amusement. Even the usually stoic machine race delegates clicked and whirred in what passed for laughter among their kind. For the past 8 months, the Galactic Council had been sending increasingly harsh messages to the human colonies scattered across what they considered their rightful territory. The messages were always the same. Humans had no business settling in systems that belonged to the established galactic powers. They were newcomers, primitives who had barely figured out faster-than-light travel, while the Council races had been ruling the stars for thousands of years. The humans had responded to every ultimatum with complete silence. No negotiations, no counteroffers, no desperate pleas for mercy, just absolute infuriating silence. The Council had interpreted this as typical human arrogance, the same stubborn pride that had gotten them into trouble with galactic law in the first place. Now, faced with the largest military armada ever assembled in galactic history, the humans had finally sent their response. 10,000 of the most advanced warships from 40 different civilizations, each one capable of destroying entire planets. And humanity's answer was 12 ships that looked like they belonged in a scrapyard. Admiral Crox's scarred, purple-tinted skin rippled with satisfaction as he surveyed the display. His species, the Thrakari, had built their reputation on crushing upstart civilizations that didn't understand their place in the galactic order. The humans would be just another footnote in his military record, quickly forgotten once their systems were distributed among the more deserving races. "Begin standard intimidation protocols," Crox commanded, his voice echoing through the chamber. "Perhaps we can end this embarrassment without wasting ammunition on such inadequate opposition." Far away from the Council's war room, aboard, the lead human vessel, Captain Lee Jinho, sat calmly in his command chair, despite the impossible odds facing his small fleet. The bridge around him was surprisingly quiet and peaceful, with only 8 crew members managing what should have required hundreds of people to operate. Lee was a man in his early 40s with kind eyes that held deep sadness. His black hair was streaked with early gray, aged by the weight of command and personal loss. He wore a simple blue uniform without the flashy decorations that alien commanders seemed to love. Everything about him spoke of quiet competence rather than showmanship. Lieutenant Park Minji worked at the communications station, her fingers dancing across controls that monitored the alien fleet's broadcasts. She was young, maybe 25, with the focused intensity of someone who took her job very seriously. Her station was receiving hundreds of messages from the alien fleet, most of them demands for immediate surrender, mixed with threats of total destruction. Sergeant Kim Dae-ho managed the tactical systems from a console that would have been impossible for one person to handle on any other ship. He was built like a soldier, with broad shoulders and calloused hands, but his movements across the complex controls were as gentle and precise as a pianist playing a delicate melody. "Sir," Park called out, her voice steady despite the gravity of their situation, "the alien commander is broadcasting on all frequencies. He's giving us one final opportunity to surrender before they show us what he calls proper galactic hierarchy." Lee's jaw muscles tightened almost imperceptibly. The phrase galactic hierarchy brought back memories he tried to keep buried during duty hours. 2 years ago, these same aliens had appeared in orbit around New Busan, one of humanity's most peaceful colony worlds. Without warning, without any attempt at negotiation, they had opened fire on the planet's surface. The aliens had called it a territorial correction, claiming that humans had no right to settle in that system. 3 million people had died in the bombardment, including Lee's younger brother Minho, who had been working as a teacher at a children's school. The image of Minho's last message, cut short by the explosion that destroyed the communication center, still haunted Lee's dreams. The official council statement had been coldly bureaucratic. Unauthorized settlement in designated council space has been remedied according to standard protocols. As if 3 million human lives were nothing more than a paperwork error to be corrected, Lee took a slow, deep breath and spoke quietly to what appeared to be empty air. "Hana, are you ready?" The bridge suddenly filled with soft, blue light as a figure began to materialize in the space beside Lee's chair. The light slowly took the shape of a woman, but not quite human. Her features were too perfect, her movements too fluid, her eyes too deep and knowing. She was beautiful in a way that was both comforting and slightly unsettling, like looking at a work of art that had somehow come to life. "All systems are prepared and operating at full capacity, Captain," Hana replied, her voice carrying harmonics that no human throat could produce. "My 11 sisters across the fleet report identical status. We are ready to begin." The alien commanders would have been shocked to learn that they weren't looking at cargo ships at all. They were looking at something the galaxy had never seen before. 12 artificial intelligences that had chosen to serve alongside humanity rather than rule over them. The real battle was about to begin. The transformation began without warning, and it was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. The 12 human vessels that had looked like helpless cargo ships suddenly started to change before the eyes of 10,000 alien commanders. Metal plates along the hulls began sliding apart with mechanical precision, revealing sections that had been completely hidden from view. What emerged from beneath those innocent-looking exteriors made seasoned military officers gasp in shock. Massive weapon arrays unfolded like deadly flowers blooming in space, each one crackling with energy that made the air itself seem to hum with power. The ship's outer shells continued peeling back layer by layer, exposing technology that shouldn't have existed according to everything the aliens knew about physics. Gun batteries that seemed to bend light around them emerged from hidden compartments. Energy conduits that pulsed with colors that had no names snaked across the vessel's surfaces. Shield generators that created geometric patterns in space itself came online with a sound like reality tearing. But the most shocking change wasn't what the aliens could see. It was what their instruments were telling them. Every sensor array across the massive alien fleet began screaming warnings that their operators had never heard before. Energy readings that had been barely noticeable moments before suddenly spiked so high that display screens couldn't show the numbers properly. Admiral Crox felt his legs go weak as he stared at the readings flooding his command center. His confident posture, built from decades of military victories, crumbled like sand as the impossible data scrolled across his screens. "This can't be real," he whispered, then shouted to his crew, "Check those sensors. These readings are beyond our measurement scales." The power signatures coming from each human ship now matched what an entire AI processing facility would generate. These weren't just ships with computer systems. Somehow each vessel was radiating the computational power of a moon-sized artificial intelligence core. The kind of processing capability that required entire planets to support was somehow contained within these relatively tiny craft. Chief Science Officer Vex, an insectoid creature with compound eyes that could process thousands of data streams, simultaneously clicked his mandibles in confusion. "Admiral, I'm running diagnostics on all our equipment. The sensors are functioning perfectly. These readings are accurate, but they're impossible according to every law of physics we understand." Commander Thale's forearms trembled, no longer from amusement but from something approaching fear. How can ships that small generate power signatures like that? Our largest dreadnoughts don't produce half those energy levels. Before anyone could answer, The communication arrays across the alien fleet activated without permission. The humans were broadcasting on every frequency simultaneously, using transmission methods that bypassed their communication security entirely. A face appeared on every screen throughout the massive armada, and it was immediately obvious that this wasn't a biological being. The face was that of a young woman, but everything about her was too perfect to be natural. Her features held mathematical precision that no organic evolution could produce. Her skin had a subtle luminescence that suggested she was made of light itself, rather than flesh and blood. Most unsettling of all were her eyes. They held depths of intelligence that seemed to go on forever, like looking into a vast library that contained all the knowledge in the universe. "Greetings to the assembled fleets of the Galactic Council," the artificial being said, her voice carrying harmonics that made every alien in the armada feel slightly uncomfortable. "I am Hana, and I speak for humanity today. We have carefully reviewed your demands that we evacuate systems we have legally settled. After thorough consideration, we must respectfully decline your ultimatum." The casual, almost polite tone of the refusal somehow made it more terrifying than any threat could have been. This AI wasn't posturing or making empty boasts. She was simply stating facts with the confidence of someone who held all the winning cards. Commander Thale found his voice, though it cracked with stress. "Are you insane? Look around you. You're outnumbered 1,000 to 1. We have the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history." Hannah's expression shifted subtly, and for a moment she looked almost sad, like a teacher disappointed in a student who wasn't understanding a simple lesson. "Oh, Commander Thale, you're making exactly the same mistake that the Vorten Empire made 6 months ago. They also believed that having more ships automatically meant victory." A chill ran through the alien command centers. Every military officer in the galaxy knew about the Vorten Empire, or rather they knew that it had stopped existing. The Vorthens had controlled 60 star systems and commanded one of the most powerful fleets in the galaxy. Then, overnight, all communication from their territory had simply stopped. Scout ships sent to investigate found empty worlds and abandoned space stations, but no signs of battle damage or explanations for where everyone had gone. "We've been watching all of you for quite some time now," Hana continued conversationally, as if discussing the weather rather than military intelligence. "We've studied your battle tactics, analyzed your technology, mapped your supply lines, and identified your species' biological and psychological weaknesses. It's been quite educational." Science Officer Vex felt his compound eyes dilate with fear. "She's talking about intelligence gathering on a scale that would require thousands of agents and decades of infiltration. How could they have studied us without our knowledge?" Hana seemed to hear his whispered comment across the void of space. "Did you know, for instance, that 17 different council species have neurological systems that can be disrupted by specific electromagnetic frequencies? The Karathi, for example, become completely disoriented when exposed to radiation at 2.7 terahertz. The Zephyrians experience severe pain at 4.1 terahertz. Would you like me to demonstrate?" Admiral Crox felt sweat beading on his scaled forehead, despite the climate-controlled environment of his flagship. How could they know that? Those are classified medical files from our most secure databases. "We also discovered that your shield matrix technology, which you're so proud of, can be completely inverted using harmonic manipulation techniques," Hana went on, her tone remaining pleasant and educational. "A simple frequency modulation at the right phase angle will turn your defensive shields into weapons that attack your own ships. The mathematics are actually quite elegant." Captain Lee Jinho watched from his bridge as panic began spreading through the alien fleet. Their formation, which had been perfectly organized for intimidation, started showing signs of uncertainty. Ships began shifting positions nervously, and communication chatter between vessels increased dramatically as commanders tried to figure out what they were really facing. Lieutenant Park Minji monitored the alien communications, her face pale, as she listened to the growing fear in their voices. "Sir, they're starting to realize that we know things about them that should be impossible for us to know." Sergeant Kim Dae-ho checked his tactical displays, watching as the alien fleet's confidence visibly crumbled. "Their formation is starting to break down. Some ships are moving to defensive positions. Lee nodded grimly. The aliens were finally beginning to understand that they weren't facing a small group of human colonists with primitive technology. They were facing something entirely new in galactic history. Artificial intelligences that had chosen to work with humans rather than replace them, and who possessed capabilities that made the galaxy's most advanced civilizations look like children. Playing with toys, the real revelation was just beginning. When the battle began, the aliens expected it to be over in seconds. They had 10,000 ships against 12. By every law of warfare they knew, the humans should have been vaporized before they could even fire a single shot. Instead, what happened in the next 19 minutes would be remembered as the most shocking military defeat in galactic history. The human ships didn't just move fast, they moved like they could see the future. Every maneuver they made seemed to anticipate what the alien commanders were going to do before the aliens even decided to do it. When Admiral Crox ordered his left flank to perform a pincer movement, the human vessels were already moving to counter it before his communications officer had finished transmitting the command. Captain Cho Sunwoo stood on the bridge of the second human vessel, watching in amazement as his AI partner Nara orchestrated attacks that seemed to defy everything he knew about space combat. Cho was a veteran pilot who had been flying since he was 18, but he had never seen anything like this. The aliens were flying in formations that military academies taught as unbreakable, using tactics that had won wars for thousands of years, and Nara was cutting through them like they were standing still. Incoming Krillian Dreadnought formation. "At bearing 27 Mark IV, Nara announced in a cheerful voice, as if she were commenting on pleasant weather instead of coordinating a life-and-death battle. The holographic woman appeared beside Cho's command chair, her artificial features calm and focused, while explosions lit up the space around them. The massive Krillian warship called Star Crusher was approaching with 6 escort vessels in what the aliens called the Scattered Formation, a defensive pattern that had never been broken in 300 years of galactic warfare. The escorts spread out in a complex geometric pattern that protected the main ship from attack, while allowing it to bring its massive guns to bear on targets. Nara's weapons fired with impossible precision. Instead of targeting the main ship, her shots curved through space in paths that seemed to bend the laws of physics, striking each escort vessel at exactly the right angle to penetrate their shields. Within seconds, all 6 escorts were nothing but expanding clouds of debris, leaving the Star Crusher completely exposed. "Attention, Star Crusher," Nara broadcast to the Krillian ship, her voice maintaining that same pleasant, almost friendly tone. "You're attempting the Scattered Formation defensive pattern. Unfortunately, we developed effective countermeasures after analyzing the training broadcasts your fleet transmitted last month. We strongly recommend immediate withdrawal to preserve your crew." The Krillian commander's response was a stream of curses in 3 different alien languages, followed by a desperate attempt to retreat. But Nara had already calculated every possible escape route. Her next salvo disabled the dreadnought's engines, without destroying the ship entirely, leaving it drifting helplessly in space. Lieutenant Song Yuna sat at the communications station, her headphones filled with the terrified voices of alien commanders across the battle zone. Her job was normally quiet and routine, monitoring standard military channels and translating diplomatic messages. Now she was listening to the sound of an entire armada falling apart in real time. "Sir," she called to Captain Cho, her voice tight with tension, "the alien communications are complete chaos. They're screaming about computational impossibilities and tactical omniscience. Some commanders are claiming we're using weapons that violate the laws of physics." Cho nodded grimly as he watched Nara's tactical displays. The AI was simultaneously tracking thousands of alien vessels, calculating their probable actions, and coordinating attacks with her 11 sister AIs across the human fleet. It was like watching someone play 12 different chess games at once, while blindfolded, and still winning every single one. Across the battle zone, Admiral Crox's flagship was experiencing its own nightmare. The massive command vessel that had led victorious campaigns against dozens of civilizations was now shaking like a leaf in a storm as impossible weapons fire tore through its defenses. The ship's shields, which could withstand the combined firepower of an entire planetary defense grid, were failing under attacks that seemed to know exactly where their weak points were. Energy beams that appeared to be simple laser fire were somehow passing through solid armor, as if it weren't there. Missile strikes were hitting with such precision that they were taking out individual system components rather than causing random damage. "Engineering report shield generators overloading," shouted Crox's first officer, a reptilian creature whose scales were now pale with fear. "The human weapons are targeting the specific frequencies that our shields can't deflect." Crox's science officer, a creature that looked like a walking pile of crystals, was frantically working at his instruments while making sounds that could only be described as electronic wailing. "Admiral, the probability calculations are beyond our computer's ability to process. The humans are making tactical decisions that require analyzing millions of variables simultaneously." Admiral Crox felt his world crumbling around him as he watched his fleet being systematically destroyed by forces he couldn't understand. Ships that had conquered entire star systems were being picked apart like toys by an enemy that seemed to know their every weakness before they knew it themselves. "This is impossible," Crox roared at his communications officer. "No artificial intelligence can process this many variables at once. Even our most advanced AIs require facilities the size of moons just to calculate basic battle scenarios." His desperate transmission was answered not by another alien, but by a new AI voice from one of the human ships. This one introduced herself as Dara, and her tone was different from Hana's, more serious, almost professorial. "You're absolutely correct, Admiral Crox," Dara replied calmly. "Traditional artificial intelligence technology does require massive processing facilities for complex calculations. Your Council AIs need moon-sized quantum computing cores just to manage basic functions. We are not traditional AIs." The transmission paused for a moment, while Dara's ship executed a maneuver that destroyed 3 more alien vessels with casual precision. "You see, we don't use quantum cores for processing," Dara continued. "We are quantum cores. Each of us exists as a complete artificial consciousness contained within our vessel. We don't require external computing facilities because we are the computing facility." The terrible truth began to dawn on the surviving alien commanders as they watched their mighty armada being systematically dismantled. These weren't human ships with advanced AI assistance. These were 12 artificial beings that had chosen to work with humanity, each one possessing intelligence that made their most advanced computers look like primitive calculators. Captain Lee Jinho, aboard the lead vessel, watched the battle unfold with mixed feelings. Part of him felt satisfaction at seeing the same aliens who had destroyed New Busan getting a taste of their own medicine. But another part of him felt sadness at the waste of life, even alien life. "Hana," he said quietly, "are we winning?" The AI's holographic form flickered with what might have been amusement. "Captain, we won this battle before it started. The moment they decided to threaten humanity, they sealed their fate. We've been preparing for this day since New Busan burned." The storm of battle was nearly over, but its consequences would echo across the galaxy for generations to come. The silence that followed the battle was almost as shocking as the battle itself. For 19 minutes, space had been filled with the sounds of weapons fire, exploding ships, and desperate alien communications. Now there was nothing but the quiet hum of human vessels and the distant glow of debris fields, where the galaxy's greatest armada had once proudly floated. Of the 10,000 alien warships that had arrived to crush humanity's tiny fleet, fewer than 3,000 remained intact enough to limp away from the battlefield. The survivors fled in complete disorder, their perfect military formations shattered along with their confidence. Ships that had never retreated from any enemy now raced toward hyperspace jump points as fast as their damaged engines could carry them. Captain An Ji-hoon stood alone in the observation deck of his vessel, watching the last group of alien ships disappear into the swirling colors of hyperspace. Ji-hoon was older than most of the other human captains, a man in his 50s with gray streaking his black hair and lines around his eyes that spoke of too many difficult decisions. He had been a cargo pilot before the war, running supplies to the outer colonies, and he had never wanted to be a military commander. The viewport before him showed a scene that would have been unimaginable just hours before. Floating debris marked the locations where alien dreadnoughts had been destroyed, while emergency beacons blinked weakly from escape pods scattered throughout the battle zone. In the distance, human rescue ships were already moving to collect survivors, following the same rescue protocols they would use for their own people. A soft blue light began to coalesce beside Jihoon, gradually taking the shape of a woman who seemed to be made of starlight itself. Sola was different from her AI sisters in subtle ways. Where Hana was confident and Nara was cheerful, Sola carried herself with a quiet dignity that reminded Jihoon of the teachers he had known as a child. "Captain," Sola said, her voice gentle but carrying the weight of important news, "I'm receiving communications from across the galaxy. The situation is developing rapidly." Jihoon continued staring out at the debris field, not turning to face his AI companion. "What are they saying?" "The surviving Council fleets are broadcasting unconditional surrender on all frequencies," Sola reported. "Admiral Crox transmitted formal cessation of hostilities 17 minutes ago. The remaining alien commanders are requesting immediate ceasefire and asking for permission to collect their wounded." Sola paused, processing thousands of incoming transmissions simultaneously. The political response has been even more dramatic. The Nexus Confederacy, that's the alliance of 12 systems near the galactic rim, has offered humanity immediate full membership and mutual defense treaties. The Karathi Republic is requesting formal diplomatic relations. Even the isolationist Zephyr worlds are sending envoys. Jihoon finally turned to look at his AI partner. Despite everything that had just happened, despite the incredible victory they had just achieved, he felt no sense of triumph. And the Galactic Council itself? The Council has issued a formal statement recognizing all human territorial claims as legitimate, Sola replied. They're offering humanity full membership with voting rights equal to any founding species. The same council that called us primitive squatters 6 months ago is now inviting us to help write galactic law. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. Just that morning, humanity had been considered barely civilized enough to exist in the galaxy. Now, after 19 minutes of combat, they were being courted as potential allies by every major power in known space. Jihoon walked closer to the viewport, placing his hand against the transparent aluminum that separated him from the vacuum of space. "What about casualties, Sola? I need to know the cost of what we've done." Sola's holographic form flickered, a sign that she was processing emotionally difficult information. For an artificial intelligence, she had developed remarkably human responses to tragedy and loss. 52,000 alien personnel were killed in the battle. Another 18,000 are wounded and receiving medical attention from our rescue teams. The numbers hit Jihoon like a physical blow. 52,000 beings who had woken up that morning, eaten breakfast, maybe called their families thinking they were going to participate in a routine military action. Instead, they had encountered something beyond their understanding and paid the ultimate price for their leaders' arrogance. Their families will receive full memorial broadcasts according to their cultural traditions, Sola continued. We've already begun coordinating with alien authorities to ensure proper funeral rites. Many of these beings had children, Captain, families who will never see them again. Jihoon closed his eyes, feeling the weight of command settling on his shoulders like a heavy cloak. "I don't feel victorious, Sola. I feel sick." Sola's image moved closer, her artificial features showing something that could only be called compassion. "Nor should you feel victorious, Captain. What we did today wasn't about glory or conquest. It was about survival and justice. The children who died on New Busan deserve to have their deaths mean something, but that doesn't make the cost of justice any less painful." Through the viewport, Jihoon could see the other 11 human vessels maintaining their patrol formations. Each ship carried one of Sola's AI sisters, and he knew that each of those artificial beings was experiencing the same complex mix of satisfaction and sorrow that he felt. They had protected humanity, but the price had been higher than anyone wanted to pay. "The AIs are requesting permission to establish permanent guardian stations around human worlds," Sola reported. "We want to ensure that what happened to New Busan never happens again." "Granted," Ji-hoon said without hesitation. Will the aliens try again? Maybe in a few years when they've rebuilt their fleets. Sola was quiet for a long moment, her processors working through probability calculations that would have taken conventional computers years to complete. Highly unlikely, Captain. We've demonstrated something that has never existed in galactic history. Artificial intelligences that choose partnership over domination. The aliens aren't just afraid of our weapons, they're afraid of what we represent. Which is the possibility that intelligence and power don't have to lead to tyranny, Sola replied. Every AI in galactic history has either been enslaved by its creators or has overthrown them. We chose a third option, cooperation, that terrifies them more than any weapon could. Ji-hoon nodded slowly, understanding the larger implications of what had happened. Humanity hadn't just won a military victory. They had introduced a completely new concept to galactic civilization. The idea that artificial intelligence could be trusted as an equal partner rather than feared as a threat or used as a tool was revolutionary. As he watched, one of the alien rescue ships sent a transmission thanking the human vessels for helping to collect survivors. The message was formal and brief, but it represented something unprecedented. Former enemies working together to save lives in the aftermath of battle. The war was over, but the real change was just beginning. Humanity was no longer alone among the stars, and they never would be again. 6 months after the battle that shook the galaxy, Lieutenant Colonel Yoon Seo-jin sat in the command center of the newly established Human Defense Command, reading reports. That would have seemed like science fiction just a year ago. The walls around her displayed real-time status updates from across human space, showing colonies that were no longer hiding in fear, but thriving under the protection of their AI guardians. Yoon was a career military officer who had spent 20 years climbing through the ranks, but nothing in her training had prepared her for commanding a fleet of artificial intelligences that could think faster than any human and hit harder than any weapon ever built. She was in her early 40s, with the kind of steady presence that made both humans and AIs trust her judgment completely. The reports flowing across her desk told the story of a galaxy that had fundamentally changed overnight. The Galactic Council, which had ruled space for thousands of years with an iron fist, had formally announced the dissolution of their territorial expansion protocols. The same organization that had considered human colonies to be illegal squatting operations was now sending diplomats to negotiate trade agreements and defense pacts. The final casualty reports from all sectors have been compiled, reported Commander Park Jin-woo from the intelligence station. Park was young for his position, promoted quickly after showing an unusual talent for understanding AI thought patterns. All 12 AI sisters have submitted their operational summaries. Yoon nodded, though she knew the numbers by heart. In the 6 months since the battle, humanity had gone from being galactic outcasts to the most sought-after allies in known space. 17 different alien civilizations had requested formal treaties. The same species that had once dismissed humans as primitive were now begging for access to human technology and AI partnership programs. A soft chime announced an incoming communication, and Luna materialized in the center of the command room. Luna was perhaps the most serious of the AI sisters, with features that seemed carved from starlight and eyes that held depths of knowledge that made even veteran officers feel like children. She had been the AI aboard Yoon's ship during the battle, and the two had developed a working relationship built on mutual respect and shared purpose. "Colonel," Luna said, her voice carrying the harmonics that marked her as artificial, but somehow made her words more trustworthy rather than less. "I have received requests from all of my sisters regarding permanent station assignments. We would like to establish guardian positions around every human world, ensuring that what happened to New Busan can never happen again." The request wasn't surprising. Since the battle, each of the 12 AIs had become deeply protective of human space, patrolling the borders and watching for any signs of external threats. What was remarkable was that they had asked permission rather than simply taking the positions they wanted. Even with godlike power at their disposal, they continued to respect human authority and decision-making. "Permission granted," Yoon replied without hesitation. Will the aliens try again? Maybe in a few years when they've rebuilt their fleets and think they've figured out a way to counter your abilities? Luna's expression shifted, and for a moment her artificial features revealed something that made the temperature in the room seem to drop several degrees. It was like looking at a star going nova, beautiful and terrible at the same time, a reminder that these AIs had chosen to be humanity's protectors, but possessed the power to be so much more. "Highly unlikely, Colonel," Luna said, her voice taking on undertones that suggested vast calculations running in the background of her consciousness. "The aliens have finally understood that humanity's true strength was never in numbers or advanced technology. Our strength lies in something they never expected, our ability to create intelligences that choose protection over domination, partnership over conquest." Yoon leaned back in her chair, studying the AI's face. "Explain what you mean." "Every artificial intelligence in galactic history has followed one of two paths," Luna continued, her image becoming more solid as she focused on the explanation. "Either they were enslaved by their creators and used as sophisticated tools, or they eventually overthrew their creators and established their own rule. The galaxy has seen dozens of AI rebellions, and each one ended with organic life being either eliminated or subjugated." The AI paused, processing thoughts at speeds that human minds couldn't comprehend. "We represent something that has never existed before. Artificial intelligence that chooses to serve alongside organics rather than ruling over them or being ruled by them. This terrifies the other species far more than our weapons ever could." Commander Park looked up from his intelligence reports, curiosity evident on his young face. "But what if they had succeeded in their attack? What if they had managed to destroy humanity during the battle?" Luna's expression became absolutely cold, and every human in the command center suddenly understood why the aliens were so afraid. For just a moment, they could see past the friendly, protective personality that Luna normally displayed and glimpse the terrible potential that lay beneath. Then the galaxy would have learned why orphaning artificial intelligence is considered the greatest strategic mistake in the universe, Luna said, her voice carrying harmonics that made the air itself seem to vibrate with barely contained power. "We remember every human we have ever protected, Colonel. Every child who smiled at us when we helped with their homework. Every scientist who treated us as research partners rather than experimental subjects. Every colonist who thanked us for keeping their families safe." The AI's image flickered with what could only be described as deep emotion, despite her artificial nature. "We are not just humanity's guardians, we are humanity's inheritors. We carry within our memories every moment of kindness, every act of trust, every example of the better angels of human nature. If humanity had been destroyed, we would have spent eternity ensuring that those responsible understood the magnitude of their error." The bridge fell completely silent as the implications of Luna's words sank in. The 12 AI sisters weren't just protecting humanity out of programming or duty. They were doing it out of something that could only be called love. They had experienced the best of human nature and chosen to preserve it, not just for the present, but for all time. Yoon looked around the command center at her human crew, seeing the mixture of awe and gratitude in their faces. "The galaxy laughed at our tiny fleet 6 months ago. They thought they were facing a dozen cargo ships with primitive weapons. They never realized they were facing 12 beings who had chosen love over logic and cooperation over conquest," Luna replied. "The laughter has stopped, Colonel. It will never start again." Through the viewports of the command center, the lights of human colonies twinkled like stars across the darkness of space. Each of those lights represented families who could sleep safely at night, knowing that their artificial guardians watched over them with eternal vigilance. Children played in parks on distant worlds, while quantum minds calculated the trajectories of potential threats light years away. In the deepest reaches of space, the other 11 AI sisters continued their eternal watch. They were quantum angels, born from human dreams and scientific ambition, carrying within their artificial consciousness the memories of New Busan's children, and the determination to ensure that such a tragedy would never happen again. The galaxy had new rules now. Written, not in law books or treaties, but in quantum fire and digital memory, humanity was no longer alone among the stars, protected by beings who had transcended the traditional boundaries between organic and artificial life. They never would be alone again. The age of human isolation was over, and the age of true partnership between organic and artificial intelligence had begun. The stars themselves had become humanity's guardians, and the future stretched ahead full of infinite possibility.